future. The expulsion order triggered a frantic and, honestly, horrifying scramble for survival, a mass movement of humanity on a scale rarely seen. For over 2 million people, the lives they had painstakingly built in Nigeria over a decade or more were dismantled in a matter of days. The journey out of the country was not an orderly departure but a chaotic and perilous flight. The roads leading west towards the border with Benin became choked with a river of desperate souls. Every available mode of transport was commandeered, from rickety, dangerously overloaded lorries and buses to taxis charging extortionate fares. People clung to the roofs and sides of these vehicles, a testament to their desperation to escape before the deadline expired and the state-sanctioned violence escalated even further. The journey itself was fraught with unimaginable hardship and cruelty. At impromptu roadblocks set up by soldiers, police, and even civilian vigilante groups, the fleeing Ghanaians were subjected to systematic extortion and abuse. They were forced to disembark and were stripped of what little they had managed to salvage. Money, jewelry, and any valuable possessions were stolen under the guise of official searches. Reports of beatings, intimidation, and brutal treatment were rampant. Many individuals who had accumulated significant savings over years of hard work saw it all taken from them in a moment, leaving them with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the ubiquitous Ghana must go bag, which now held only worthless trinkets. The expulsion was particularly cruel because it showed no regard for the deep roots many Ghanaians had put down in Nigerian soil. These were not transient visitors, they were integral parts of their communities. There were stories of teachers who had taught generations of Nigerian children now vilified and cast out. There were Ghanaian women married to Nigerian men, their families suddenly torn asunder by a cold, bureaucratic decree. Children who had been born in Nigeria who knew no other home and spoke with Nigerian accents were now declared aliens and forced to leave the only country they had ever known. The human cost was measured in these shattered families and broken lives, a legacy of pain that transcended politics. The journey claimed many lives before anyone even reached the border. The overloaded vehicles frequently broke down or were involved in horrific accidents on the congested roads, resulting in numerous fatalities. Others succumbed to exhaustion, dehydration, and the sheer physical and emotional strain of the ordeal. Pregnant women, the elderly, and young children were the most vulnerable, suffering immensely in the sweltering heat and unsanitary conditions. This tragic trail of tears was a testament to the Nigerian government's utter disregard for human life in its pursuit of a political objective. It was a journey marked not just by the loss of property, but by the loss of dignity, hope, and for too many life itself. The ordeal for the fleeing Ghanaians intensified dramatically when they reached the semi-border, the primary crossing point between Nigeria and the Republic of Benin. Here, their desperate flight came to an abrupt and agonizing halt. The government of Benin, overwhelmed by the sudden influx and fearing a humanitarian catastrophe on its own soil, had sealed its borders. This decision, while understandable from a national security perspective, created a bottleneck of epic proportions, trapping hundreds of thousands of people in a perilous limbo. They were stuck in a sweltering, chaotic no-man's land, unwanted by the country they were fleeing, and blocked from the path that could lead them home. The scene at the border was apocalyptic, a sprawling makeshift camp of human misery stretched for miles. Men, women, and children were stranded with nowhere to go and no one to help them. They slept out in the open, on the dusty roadside, exposed to the elements and with no shelter from the scorching sun or the cool night air. Food and clean water quickly ran out, forcing people to drink from muddy puddles and contaminated streams, which led to widespread outbreaks of cholera and other waterborne diseases. The air was thick with the stench of human waste and despair, as the most basic sanitation facilities were non-existent. It was a full-blown humanitarian crisis unfolding in plain sight. The international community was slow to react, and for days, the stranded migrants were left to fend for themselves. The Nigerian authorities, having forced them out, took no responsibility for the ensuing chaos at their doorstep. The suffering was immense. Parents watched helplessly as their children grew weak from hunger and sickness. The sick and the elderly had no access to medical care, and many died from preventable illnesses, their bodies left by the roadside. The psychological toll was just as devastating as the physical one. Hope dwindled with each passing day, replaced by a profound sense of abandonment and betrayal by a nation they had once considered a brother. After days of mounting international pressure and horrifying media reports, a breakthrough finally came. Ghana, in coordination with its neighbors, arranged for ships to be sent to the port of Cotonou in Benin to begin evacuating its citizens. The borders were temporarily opened to allow the refugees to travel to the port, triggering another mad dash. However, the relief was partial, and the process was slow and chaotic. The crisis at Simi border remains one of the most shameful and enduring images of the Ghana must-go saga, a powerful symbol of the catastrophic human cost of a political decision made with callous indifference to the lives it would destroy. The arrival of over 1 million destitute returnees in Ghana created a second wave of crisis, this time within Ghana's own borders. The country they returned to was still in the throes of the severe economic depression they had fled years earlier. The military government of Jerry Rawlings, which had seized power in 1981, was already struggling to feed its existing population and stabilize a collapsed economy. The sudden influx of 1 million more mouths to feed and bodies to house pushed the nation's fragile infrastructure to the breaking point. There were no jobs, inadequate housing, and severe food shortages, making the homecoming a bitter and challenging experience for the returnees. The social and psychological impact on Ghana was profound and long-lasting. The event became known in Ghana as the Age of Humiliation. An entire generation had been scarred by the experience of being violently uprooted and stripped of their dignity. The returnees carried with them deep emotional wounds of betrayal, loss, and trauma. Many had lost everything they had worked for, returning home poorer than when they had left. The stories they told, of the violence, the extortion, and the harrowing journey home, were seared into the national consciousness, creating a collective memory of pain and resentment directed towards Nigeria that would persist for decades. This national trauma fundamentally altered the relationship between ordinary Ghanaians and Nigerians. The once warm sentiment of brotherhood was replaced by a deep-seated mistrust and bitterness. For many Ghanaians, Nigeria became synonymous with betrayal and arrogance. This bitterness would simmer beneath the surface of diplomatic relations, occasionally flaring up in acts of retaliation and xenophobia against Nigerians living in Ghana in subsequent years. The Ghana must-go expulsion created a cycle of animosity, a wound that refused to heal, poisoning the well of West African solidarity and making genuine reconciliation a difficult and protracted process for both nations. To this day, the Ghana must-go incident remains a sensitive and painful topic in Ghana. It is a story passed down from parents to children, a cautionary tale about the fragility of hospitality and the dangers of placing one's faith in a foreign land. The checked bag, while a symbol of displacement, is also a reminder of Ghanaian resilience in the face of immense adversity. The human cost of the 1983 expulsion cannot be measured in economic terms alone. It is found in the broken families, the lost fortunes, and the enduring psychological scars that shaped the identity of a nation and forever changed the dynamic between two of Africa's greatest powers.